and real America's voice. Go ahead, scan the QR code now.
Good evening, America. Happy Friday, and welcome to a very special edition of Just the News, No Noise. We've been talking about this. Tonight, we're going to address this subject, China syndrome, Beijing's imminent threat inside academia and biolabs. I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting as always from the nation's capital. Tonight, we're going to take a deep dive into some shocking reporting about the extent to which Chinese Communist Party has been infiltrating America's most prestigious universities, and we'll also attempt to uncover how and why they're doing it. We already know the major reason. They're looking to steal the intellectual property of the United States in a number of different scientific fields, including bioterrorism, biology, and of course our high technology. We've got an incredible field of experts to break that all down. Now, before we get to that, I want to stop here because there's one piece of breaking news I want to make sure we acknowledge at the top of the show. I don't want today to pass without this happening. It was a little over 13 years ago when a group of terrorists attacked the Benghazi compound in Libya. They killed our ambassador there, Chris Stevens, and 3 other Americans. Movies like 13 Hours were made on that harrowing day. We were lied to at the beginning of that episode. We were told it was America's fault that attack occurred because there was some anti-Muslim video making the rounds in Libya. That wasn't the reason. It turned out it was an organized terror attack involving an offshoot of Al-Qaeda. This morning, FBI Director Kash Patel went out to an airfield here in America and greeted one of the terrorists who carried out that attack. He was arrested, detained, and then he was extradited to the United States. Justice, finally, for the victims of that horrible attack nearly 14 years ago. All the details are over at justthenews.com. Go check that out. I didn't want today to pass. Now, here's an amazing thing. Kash Patel is going to kick us off on this show in just a few minutes. But first, let me get back to the theme. We've got new details to get to you tonight regarding the FBI's raid of a Chinese-linked biolab in Las Vegas. The man who allegedly ran it also was tied to another biolab, a legal biolab that was discovered in California in 2023, right in the aftermath of COVID. These stories should concern us all. Dangerous pathogens right among us in suburban neighborhoods in California and Las Vegas. As I mentioned, we're going to talk to FBI Director Kash Patel about that particular story and whether we were misled about these Chinese threats by his predecessor, Chris Wray. We're going to dive into that. A lot to go on tonight. All right, before we do that, let me tell you who else is going to be on the show tonight. We got a good one. The director of the National Institutes of Health, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, is going to be here. We're going to ask him, have they stopped that dangerous gain of function? You're going to get an answer tonight for the first time. He'll also tell us what he's doing to stop the infiltration of Chinese academics in our prestigious universities. And then the chairman of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, Congressman Rick Crawford of Arkansas, is going to join us. He's going to talk about what they're learning at the intelligence level about China's intentions with these things. And finally, we'll bring it all together with a group that gave us some of the data for some of our big stories at Just the News the last week. The head of the American Accountability Foundation will be here with us to describe that bombshell report about those card-carrying members of the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, who are inside our universities in some cases working on taxpayer-funded projects. Tom Jones, the president of that great group, will join us. So that's a great show. Before I get to that incredible lineup, let me bring in my amazing co-host, Amanda Head. Amanda, from Benghazi, where we were denied truths for a long time, to the Chinese threat, which we were often denied truths on, particularly during the Biden years, we're starting to get a sense of just how much truth we were denied and also how much opportunity we have now to fix very large security vulnerabilities in America. I just want to get your thoughts on what lies ahead in the show today.
Yeah, John, incredible development on Benghazi. To borrow and twist the words of Hillary Clinton, this is why this matters. At this point, this we all remember what she said during that hearing. That was such a flippant remark. At this point, what difference does it make? This is the difference that it makes when you have an FBI who dives in and tries to get answers and achieves those answers so that those who lost loved ones on that fateful day in Benghazi can rest a little bit easier. And then, shifting to this China conversation, John, I don't think that there is any doubt within this administration that China is our adversary. We know that former President Joe Biden repeatedly characterized it as a competition and not an adversarial relationship. But you look at the chemical poisoning or terrorism via fentanyl, the medical or viral poisoning via terrorism from COVID. I mean, this is a country that is trying to work its tentacles into every sector of our country and our country's society. And I can't wait to dive into everything that we're going to learn tonight.
Yeah, there's no doubt we're going to learn a lot. The prior administration opened the border so that thousands of military-aged Chinese men came across the border, including people like those who were running these labs, these illegal biolabs. They shut down the FBI's primary counterintelligence program called the China Initiative. And of course, they didn't bring justice to the terrorists who carried out that Benghazi attack. In 1 year, all that has changed under Kash Patel, under President Trump, under Jay Bhattacharya, under Vice President J.D. Vance, and so many others. And earlier today, you and I had a chance to sit down and spend some time with Kash Patel. He had just gotten back from the airstrip where that terrorist had been brought to justice back here on American soil. And he had some bombshells to tell us. Folks, take a watch to what Kash Patel told us. All right, joining us now, the man behind that extraordinary arrest and extradition today in the Benghazi case, as well as that raid in Las Vegas this past weekend on that Chinese biolab, the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, a good friend of our show, Kash Patel. Mr. Director, good to have you back on.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, we want to be talking about China. That was the purpose of today's show. But this arrest, this extradition, a decade in the making. Tell us how it came down.
Absolutely. Look, President Trump has never forgotten Benghazi, and President Trump never forgets to provide for law enforcement and make sure we use law enforcement to give the families a modicum of peace and justice that they deserve. This administration and the Attorney General was relentless. And when then Deputy Director Dan Bongino and I spearheaded the effort to go get Bakush, an individual who's allegedly responsible for the terrorist attacks in Benghazi that took 4 American lives. And over the last few days, we were able to successfully execute a foreign transfer of custody, apprehend this individual overseas. And I was there on the airfield at about 1 a.m. this morning, or 2 a.m. this morning when he landed at one of our airfields and was taken into official custody to face prosecution.
What a moment.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. Great answers for the American people and those involved. Kash, Director, I want to move on to the issue of this lab in Las Vegas. At one point during the Biden administration, I believe there was a 700% increase in Chinese nationals who had come into this country via our very porous, basically wide open southern border. What tipped you off to this, and do you anticipate that there are going to be more facilities like this?
Look, this FBI under this leadership has prioritized a threat by the CCP against us. And we've taken swift action. Just last year in Michigan, we arrested 3 individual researchers at the University of Michigan who did import illegally biohazardous materials and pathogens into the United States of America to not only destroy our ability to successfully have scientific labs that are pro-America, but also attack our agricultural and bioseed industry. And so we've been on it since then. Specifically to this one over in Las Vegas, we knew about this information and worked with the state law enforcement authorities there in Las Vegas to execute these search warrants and collect over 1,000 samples of material that has now been sent back to the FBI lab for analysis. And this is something that we're continuing to uncover, because if you recall, a similar incident in Reedley, California from a few years ago was evidently buried by the prior administration, and they said it had no connection to the CCP. When we discovered that, we took swift action to course correct the intelligence and figure out why the American public was misled by individuals in this institution, including my predecessor. We're going to get to the bottom of it. We're just awaiting the lab results, and we're going to keep going.
So, Director, during the Biden years, the border obviously was opened up, as Amanda said, but another thing happened. The China Initiative, which was the FBI's #1 counterintelligence effort against Chinese espionage, particularly carried out through academia, it was shut down. Hundreds of more scientists came in. There was a blindness for a series of years. Is the China Initiative back in force, or do you have something new that's resulting in all these discoveries and all these arrests that you're beginning to make?
Well, look, this is just another disastrous example of failing to protect national security by the Biden administration, who takes down an initiative against our number one adversary, the CCP, when they are not only conducting counter-espionage activities here in the homeland against Americans, but also overseas, and importing illegal biopathogens to harm our way of life. That is an intentional, poor decision to the detriment of our national security. President Trump came in and said, we're reversing course. We don't necessarily need a new initiative. We just need the FBI all in against the CCP. And that's what we've done. You saw our success with fentanyl in mainland China, and that extension of our abilities to locate individuals from the CCP who are interfering and breaking the law has never been a higher priority in this administration over the last year than it is now.
Director, you mentioned your predecessor, Chris Wray, and I distinctly remember when he was testifying to Congress, there was a moment where he talked about how lights were blinking red. And I think that was around the time that they had bolos out for military-aged fighting males coming in from various countries. But does it seem to you, as you look at the work, or maybe lack thereof, from the previous administration, that the lights blinking red, maybe he was just saying that, but did he ever do anything about it?
Well, lights can blink whatever color they want. You don't have to be the director of the FBI to know that CCP is our number one adversary and is going to continually threaten our way of life. What we did in the last year with the President Trump and the Attorney General of the Department of Justice is reprioritize our dynamic threat landscape, going after and disrupting and looking after the criminal activity from the CCP. We've arrested over 40% more individuals from the CCP for espionage alone last year. 40% increase in 1 year. And as you guys brilliantly pointed out, that's because for 4 years, there was an open border policy that allowed them and other adversaries to infiltrate America, not just through cyber warfare, but personally come here, buy land, go to our universities, and inject themselves illegally, if not and improperly, into our way of life. And this FBI has made it a priority to continuously get after it. And you saw that when we raided the lab with the state authorities in Las Vegas. And once those test results are back, we'll go public with what we found. And we'll also be talking to our partners in Congress to say, hey, this intelligence that you were given and this summary you were given previously was dead wrong. And I'm not going to mix any words about that.
Yeah, Congress and the American public were misled about the 23 discovery. There's no doubt. All right, so you corrected the intelligence. You're helping us understand it. What's our best understanding of why the Chinese government would have these freelancers in a garage with dangerous biopathogens, while having scientists sneak them into the country? Is there any assessment what China is trying to achieve? When you have these sort of dangerous things in a vacation home, a risk of a pandemic is very high.
Yeah, look, it's a couple of things. One, first and foremost, they want to disrupt our way of life. They see us on these positions that we take in agriculture and science and engineering to be the world leaders, because we are. And that leads us to the second point. What they want to do is steal it. They want to come in and, if not steal, the very secrets that we have that feed our nation and the food programs in our nation are national security, as the Secretary of Agriculture always pointed out. She's right. And so what we have to do is continuously work the interagency process to make sure that we are attacking every point in which the CCP is coming into our country to attack us, and we're not going to stop.
Huge.
Director, I want to ask you about the FBI most wanted list under Joe Biden and under Director Wray. I think the number that sticks out to me is that there were only 2 during the entire Biden administration. There are obviously residuals from that last administration that are still on there. How many in, a year or so of being on the job has the FBI captured?
I believe they captured 4 in the totality of the Biden administration. But in the first year, thanks to President Trump's leadership and backing of law enforcement and resourcing of law enforcement and our great partners at DOJ, in 1 calendar year, we captured 6 of the FBI's most wanted fugitives on planet Earth that include terrorists, murderers, rapists, and narco traffickers. And I know you guys covered it just the other week when I was down in Mexico and personally brought back not 1, but 2 of the most wanted fugitives on our list in one fell swoop, including Ryan Wedding, the modern day El Chapo. And we're able to do this because President Trump has backed law enforcement, has removed the bureaucracy and handcuffs from law enforcement, and also has made it a priority to safeguard our future and our way of life. And that's the job of this FBI, to make sure that we hold those accountable who wish to threaten us, and do in fact threaten us, by pouring tons of narcotics into our country, murdering innocent civilians, and jeopardizing the safety of our children.
So important. Mr. Director, one quick last question before we let you go. We know how busy you are. Your work at the FBI has exposed the CCP trying to steal our intel. and our innovations that you've seen it with the biolabs and putting us at physical risk with these pathogens. Earlier this year, you released evidence that China may have been trying to send fake driver's licenses into the country to meddle with our election. Is there a broader portrait starting to emerge that China might have been also meddling in elections and politics in America?
You know, we're working with our interagency partners. The mandate of the FBI is to see if there's any criminal basis to launch an investigation. And a lot of our other great cabinet partners have a mandate on election security and election fraud, and working with them. And hopefully we'll be able to publicize that information together soon.
That's going to be a big moment. Director, elections have consequences. That's one of the oldest adages in politics. There's no better example of the consequence of the 2024 election than the very different FBI you preside over today. It's a great honor to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much. And thanks again for all the men and women of the FBI who brought us Bakush and brought Benghazi to the forefront again, because there needs to be accountability, and we're not done yet.
It's a great agency and great people down in the rank and file every day. Amazing stuff. Sir, thank you so much. Folks, more on this extraordinary TV special, China Syndrome. Joining us next, the director of the National Institutes of Health, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya. He had COVID-19 right. He's also on top of this China threat. He's going to tell us how right after these messages. Hey folks, I used to think a mattress was just furniture until I got my Ghost Bed, because Ghost Bed doesn't build mattresses like furniture. You know what? They build engineered sleep systems. Their beds are serious health equipment. Beds designed for relief and recovery, not looks, not fluff. Your body should be healing while you sleep, not fighting for comfort. I notice a difference right away. If you are waking up stiff, tossing and turning, sleeping hot, even reaching for a pain reliever before you hit the bed, hoping tonight will be different, that's not aging. That could be your mattress talking to you, giving you a warning sign. Here's another thing I love about Ghost Bed. You get 101 nights to try it at home. If you don't feel the difference, you can send it back risk-free. Ghost Bed is offering my audience their lowest prices of the season, plus an extra 10% off. Go to ghostbed.com/justnews. Use that promo code JustNews. That's ghostbed.com/justnews. Use the promo code JustNews.
Real America's Voice is growing, and now it's all in one place. Introducing the new and improved RAV app, built for access, community, and choice, not paywalls. Here's the key. RAV is still free to watch. No sign-in, no membership required. Your favorite live streams, breaking coverage, and video on demand are all right there. Free, just like always.
For the War Room Posse, we have to be a force multiplier on this. We have to stick the landing.
In the White House, in the Oval Office, you're crushing it, my friend.
And if you want more, the members section is your backstage pass. Get exclusive behind-the-scenes photos and videos, insider moments from the studio and the field, and early access to new content before it goes public. Members can also unlock special experiences like virtual meet and greets, member-only auctions, and select event access, plus commercial-free viewing of certain shows inside the app. It's not just an app, it's a community. Download the RAV app today. Find it in the App Store and Google Play.
Hey folks, it's your friend John Rich. I co-founded Old Glory Bank because we heard too many stories about people getting canceled by their bank because they didn't agree with their politics. The government wanted to know where you shopped. If you bought a Bible or you shopped at a sporting goods store, you're probably on a list. We created Old Glory Bank because America needed a bank that would protect their privacy and security. Exercising your constitutional rights is not a criminal activity, and neither is loving your country. At Old Glory Bank, we stand with you.
I'm a J6er. I spent 1,143 days in prison.
About a year in prison.
We were prosecuted, persecuted.
J6ers have been treated like terrorists.
And we need your help.
Stand in the Gap was founded to stand in the gap for J6ers working to rebuild their lives after being incarcerated.
For just $10 or more, you can help these patriots get back on their feet again. Every dollar you give is being matched up to $50,000. Go now to j6support.com and donate.
Welcome back, everybody, to this special edition of Just the News, No Noise, China Syndrome, Beijing's imminent threat inside academia and biolabs. Now, we just spoke to FBI Director Kash Patel about the CCP-linked biolabs that we have found, including the one in Las Vegas that was raided just last week. So what we also know through our recent reporting here at Just the News is that the CCP has sent students to infiltrate America's top universities, where theft of U.S. technology obviously occurs. So joining us now to talk about all of this and more is is the director for the National Institutes of Health, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya. Director, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me on. So good to see you, Amanda. So good to see you, John.
Great to see you. And, during the Biden administration, we spent a lot of time talking about our porous southern border and the diseases that were possibly coming through. I remember there were cases of bubonic plague in Colorado, in California, in New Mexico. These were cases that we had not seen in decades. So now for you in this position, not only do you have to worry about those instances of diseases coming into our country, but now it's in a more nefarious form with these biolabs. How do you split time between all of this? And is there enough coverage of resources for all of it?
Well, I mean, my job is primarily to run the NIH. So, it's to do research for how to treat those diseases and, hopefully prevent them. But I do cooperate with the efforts of other parts of government and provide technical advice. And fortunately for me, there's some amazing scientists here who are very talented in thinking about these threats. And we're happy to help other parts of government figure out how to manage it.
Yeah, we're lucky to have that expertise and also under new leadership. I think it was craving new leadership. Doctor, I want to talk a little bit about why China would take the risk of having some of its people open up a biolab in a garage in an Airbnb or in a home in a suburban area in very populated areas, low containment, weird storage systems. That's all what we see in the court records. What could their possible motive be to take that level of risk on our soil?
John, I've been wondering that myself because, this is not the first, this Vegas story. There's also a lab in Reedley, California, I think it was 2024. And it had the same kind of provenance. It would seem a very similar kind of a story. And, I can tell you various kinds of speculation, but rather than do that, let me just say it's very, very dangerous to find the kinds of agents that have been reported publicly about in a situation or setting where we're seeing like men in spacesuits like emptying them, but not usually men in spacesuits actually doing the research in them. As we saw during the pandemic, when you do research like this, potentially in a environment where there's very little biosecurity, you're posing hazards to everyone around you. The fact that it's completely flying under the radar screen, it takes chance encounters to figure out that this is actually happening. We need a better system for detecting and preventing these kinds of labs from popping up, so that they don't cause the kind of havoc that the worst kinds of stories would lead you to think might happen.
Yeah. Director, is perhaps one of the ways of detecting this early? I mean, I've never been inside of a lab, whether it was homegrown or in a medical facility, but I'm assuming it requires a lot of different equipment that maybe could be flagged early. If there's someone who's purchasing this type of stuff, maybe that's a way of preventing it?
I mean, absolutely, Amanda. I think there are new systems because there's a lot of data to track through, and much of the equipment is used in other settings, so it's completely innocent. So the question is, how do you detect the signal from the noise? And the good news is that there's a lot of effort that I've seen to be able to do that. And so the American people should know that this is something that the Trump administration is working very, very hard on, so that we can detect the signals when we find them, but also not end up getting so many false positives that makes people so worried over nothing. It's something that's actively being worked on right now.
That's pretty exciting. I mean, it's probably been a hole in our safety net on that. When you came in, I think there were more than 1,000 scientists from foreign countries, mostly from China, that were in various institutions that do research in America. Some of those scientists are very talented, very capable. Some of them, as the Foundation on American Accountability showed, have strong allegiances to the Chinese Communist Party, strong allegiances to companies that are working with the Chinese military, the PLA. I know you and your colleagues in the other agencies, HHS, as a parent organization, AG, are looking and revetting those scientists. Can you tell us what that is looking like and how you split the apple so you keep the good scientists and get the bad actors out?
Yeah. So, so just to set context for this, John, for the last several decades, the U.S. has had a close collaboration with Chinese scientists. So many of the top biomedical research scientists in China were trained in the United States. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that the U.S. funded the rise in the U.S. In the Chinese biomedical research enterprise, and some of that involved essentially the Chinese authorities taking advantage of that investment. There are stories of foreign influence in universities going back now a couple of decades. I still think back to the Chinese scientist. I think his name was Charles Lieber at Harvard, that was identified as and Harvard got slapped down. In fact, I think he was put under under a criminal investigation as a result of it. And so I think it's a real problem. But also, as you say, John, it's also the case that there's a lot of innocent researchers from China that have participated. We're working on a policy that tries to distinguish that. I think, as a general matter, having the United States invest more in American scientists makes the most sense to me. And so I think we're trying to do this sort of all of the above thing, where we're both trying to address the challenge that you just identified, while at the same time investing more in American scientists. Foreign collaboration is going to be an important part of science. It's just impossible not to have that kind of foreign collaboration. So many scientific ideas come from that kind of collaboration. But we need safeguards that make sure that what the American investments don't result in threats and harms to America. And I think a lot of the investments we made in China and other countries of concern, in retrospect, probably there should have been much better safeguards in place. And we're working very hard to put those safeguards in place to allow there to be continuing foreign collaboration in countries where they're not countries of concern, so that we make sure that, for instance, another Wuhan situation never comes about, where the NIH funds research and then we can't go get the lab notebooks from Wuhan to see what happened there. That's never going to happen under my watch. But at the same time, to allow us to have American scientists collaborate with scientists in Europe and scientists in all other parts of the world for ideas that can benefit Americans.
Considering the threat that China posed to us on the heels of COVID and the threat that they would pose to us in the future, are we prepared? Do we have a pandemic preparedness protocol or system now that is souped up more so than it was when we were dealing with COVID?
Well, I think I think we still need to have another conversation about that. That's still not, in my view, yet we're in the right place for that. I think I can tell you that the appetite for lockdowns in this administration is basically zero. So I don't think we'd have the same kind of approach. But we do need to have a national conversation about what happened during COVID, especially during the Biden administration, with the vaccine mandates and all that. I think is really worth a national conversation, because it shouldn't just be some secret plan sitting in the government vault that you pull out if something terrible happens. As we saw during COVID, every single person's life was affected in some way, mostly for the worse as a result of what happened. And so we need to have a national conversation about what we would do again in that circumstance, so that it's not just as I say, a plan that sits somewhere. But I'll tell you, under my watch, I will never advocate. The NIH will not be advocating for lockdowns ever again.
Yeah, that's an important message. So I want to ask about a couple things that come up a lot, because they were realities for a period of time, even though that we were told they weren't. First is, do we have any gain of function research going on under the U.S. auspices, or have we stopped it all?
As far as the NIH's, we paused every single project that even is anywhere within the vicinity of something that could be gain of function. The White House is working on a policy, and I can just tell you, the structure of the policy will make it so that it never happens again. That nowhere in the United States government will we invest in a project that poses a risk of catastrophic harm to the American people ever again. The key difference between what the Biden administration was doing was the Biden administration had this like long, complicated list of agents, and you have to like have some regulation about figuring out that. What happened even before the Biden administration under Tony Fauci and this P3CO process that you talked about, essentially with almost no regulation. The projects were never assessed. The Wuhan bat lab experiment had a virus that was not on any list. Instead, now what we're doing is we're saying there has to be a comprehensive risk assessment of every single project that has anywhere close to the vicinity of being dangerous gain of function. And if it's dangerous gain of function, the answer is no, you can't do it. So we're headed toward a comprehensive policy for the entire federal government where that's the case. As far as the NIH is concerned, I've already implemented a policy like that where we paused dozens of grants, and as soon as the new policy comes up, we'll submit them to the new independent board that's going to be looking at this. The NIH and the other parts of government that fund this research shouldn't be doing our own homework. There should be independent groups that have the responsibility to like check it, but we should have the responsibility to report it. And institutions that do this kind of work, researchers do this kind of work, will have an obligation to report it. And if they don't, they could be severe consequences.
I know that people feel so much better about the transparency at NIH and that balance between medicine and freedom that we really did not see under former President Joe Biden. Director, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, we're going to take a very quick break, but we have much more on this special coming up on the other side.
Exactly what they're doing. They want to steal the election. We're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue, and we're going to the Capitol. They need to take back our country.
Events in Washington have taken a violent and tumultuous turn.
January 6th wasn't just a moment in history. For thousands of Americans, it was the moment their voices were taken.
It's insurrection.
They were persecuted, hunted.
Seditious conspiracy.
But behind prison walls, something unexpected happened. They found their voice again.
Started singing the national anthem.
We took it up to him at Mar-a-Lago. He goes, I'll put my voice on it.
Our supporters made this go platinum.
Real America's Voice is telling the real story of January 6th like you've never seen it before.
Everybody, this must be peaceful.
This is not the story you were shown.
I take responsibility.
This is the story they live.
Government entrapment scheme that this actually was.
The J6 Patriots are no longer staying silent. They are speaking, they are standing, and they are telling the truth.
You can't kill us. You can't beat us.
Scan the QR code or visit realamericasvoice.com. Real America's Voice presents The Sleeping Giant. Available now.
Welcome back, everybody, to our special report, China Syndrome, Beijing's imminent threat inside academia and wayward biolabs. We've been talking to some pretty heavy hitters in the executive branch, the FBI Director Kash Patel, the head of the NIH, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya. Now we're going to turn to Congress. I'm really excited about this next guest. I've been in Washington 40 years. I've been covering House Intelligence Committee. Sometimes they do incredible work like they did under Devin Nunes. Sometimes they do kind of muted work. This next guest has revived the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. It's doing some of the most important intelligence oversight work in a long time. He's the chairman of that committee. He's also a member of Congress from the great state of Arkansas, Congressman Rick Crawford. Mr. Chairman, great to have you back on the show.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
All right, you know, and you've talked previously on the show about the grave concerns we have about China, their intentions, their aggression. When you hear these things like we saw on this last week, dozens of Chinese academics who are card-carrying, China-loving, America-hating academics that got into our institutions, or a guy that had 2 different biolabs, one in California, one in Nevada, also a Chinese national, dangerous pathogens right in our suburban neighborhoods. What are we to make of what China's up to?
You know, it's a really hard problem to assess in terms of, you know, I was listening to the 2 interviews prior. Why would you have some illicit lab set up in a B&B, except for maybe you're trying to create some sort of, you know, patient zero scenario that you might infect someone, that you might create another COVID-like scenario. And I, you know, was reassured to hear the NIH Director talk about we're never going to have another lockdown. That was not handled appropriately. But it doesn't necessarily mean we couldn't have an attack that might lead to some you know, difficult circumstances for us to have to deal with. But I have no clue. I mean, we have to really got to figure out. I don't know how we get in their heads and go, why would you do this? Doesn't make any sense. If you're trying to do this in an illicit way, why would you put this in a B&B? Why would you have such poor handling techniques? Why would you do it in such a slipshod way if it wasn't almost deliberately to try to maybe attract attention? Is that what this is about? Are they trying to send a message to us? And I'm not sure we're receiving the message if they are. And we need to tune in and pay close attention to what's taking place in our country as it applies to foreign actors who are exploiting our free and open society. And this requires us to double down on our CI posture, which has not evolved and kept pace with these threats that continue to evolve and present challenges to us that I'm not sure we're fully prepared for.
Mr. Chairman, absolutely. And I hesitate to even ask this question, how do we end up here? Because I know the obvious answer is because we had a porous southern border and we had 4 years of basically unvetted immigration into this country. Was it just that we opened the door and invited them in? Is that the simple answer?
No, it goes back years. It goes back to programs like the EB-5 program that were essentially the Chinese could buy citizenship for family members. Those family members are not severing ties with their CCP relatives. It's important to note that we have created this problem by this sort of erudite thinking that we can have this great sort of new world order where we don't need borders, and we can just open up our doors to anybody that wants to come and make a contribution, quote unquote, to our economy. That's just, to me, that's wrong-headed, and it goes back. The porous border is, yes, that's when it was really accelerated, no question about it. But the Chinese have been exploiting our immigration system for decades. And I've had misgivings about this for a long, long time. And then also they've been really kind of practicing faux capitalism in a way that they can help fund activities against the United States. What they do, they come in here to the United States, they steal technology, whether it be national security technology or any other kind of technology. They steal it and they use that to either counterfeit a product or to use it to help develop their own and compete in the marketplace, and it gives them an unfair advantage. But it's also about their long-term goal to displace the United States as the preeminent economy, the preeminent military, the preeminent political leader globally. In every category, their stated goal is to displace the United States. And why, for the last, 25, 30, 40 years, we have welcomed them with open arms as if they're here to improve economic outcomes for the United States. I can't imagine. We've had governors in the past that say, we're going to go and we're going to set up an office in Shanghai or in Beijing, and we're going to welcome Chinese investment into our state because they're convinced this is going to be good for economic development. Oh, sure, it's good for economic development, just not for U.S. economic development. It's good for the Chinese, where they can come in and locate close to strategic military assets, for example, maybe close to a military base, maybe close to, a great big steel mill that is a high-tech, cutting-edge steel mill. Maybe it's their one of steel ag secrets. We've seen that happen. We have got to shut the door and make some changes in this country, or it's going to get a heck of a lot worse for us, because that's China's goal.
Yeah. So well said, and it's a wake-up moment in America. We can't be laissez-faire anymore about this. The lab in Las Vegas, where it was located, was just a short way away from a military base. You have been sounding the alarm for quite some time that there is a lot of nefarious Chinese activity around many of our military bases, whether it's land acquisitions, spying, and espionage. The Biden administration seemed to have a blind eye to it. They shut down the China initiative at the FBI. Tell us how bad the infiltrations around the military bases are and why you think the Biden administration shut down some of our eyes-on operations.
Sadly, it comes down to money. If you've got, as I mentioned, a couple of things. One was the immigration thing. If you've got individuals that are highly placed CCP politicians in China, and they want to get their children into the United States as a way to not only an entree into the United States, but now they become U.S. citizens. That's a pathway to citizenship when you get a green card, and they're essentially purchasing a green card. But they retain those connections with the Politburo, with their families back in China. So now, as a U.S. citizen, I can go and buy property, and nobody really looks any, sideways about it, because look, it's a U.S. citizen making a purchase or transaction, but what they're doing is buying that land so that they can gain access to some sort of strategic asset. Maybe military, it may be research, we don't know. Set that aside. Go back even further and talk about the number of Chinese students that gained entry into U.S. universities. It's money. They're paying full out-of-state tuition. That's what these public universities were looking at, was bottom line, how do we cash flow and try to increase our endowments, any number of reasons they might have welcomed Chinese students in mass, and they have done. And they're not here to study the arts or literature or whatever. They're here to gain hard tech degrees. Engineering, physics, biochemistry, you name it. And it's been to our detriment. And so, yes, I'm calling out the universities. I've done it before. I've talked to university presidents and said, this has to change. You can't allow these Chinese students and they'll to come in, and they'll say, well, okay, yeah, you're right. We probably need to scale that back. We need Congress to make a law that says we can't do it. So I go to them and I say, you've got this problem. You can fix it by not allowing them to come into your university. We're giving you an intelligence picture here. And they're saying, well, no, Congress has to make a law before we'll do it. Why? I mean, why does Congress have to make a law when me as a congressman, and right now as chairman of the House Intel Committee, I'm bringing you a problem, showing you the Intel picture that's a threat to the United States, and you're saying, no, you've got to make a law before we'll act on it. What does that tell you about how powerful money is to not only universities, but other institutions that are more consumed with their bottom line than they are with the security of this nation? So what took place in Las Vegas, I have no idea what the operational use for this illicit lab was, except that it's in close proximity to a population center. It's also in close proximity to a military installation of high value. I don't know if they were trying to create, as I suggested before, possibly a patient zero scenario where they can get out and create potentially an epidemic, or heaven forbid, a pandemic that makes it difficult for us to function. I don't know what their motives were, but I know that we can't continue to operate like this.
Mr. Chairman, you laid out something really important. China bought its way into our vulnerabilities. That's what this last 20 years have been about. They use money to buy into a better position to make us more vulnerable. The work you're doing on your committee is so important. It's a great honor to have you on the show today. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, what a great conversation. What great work he's doing. All right, folks, after the break, the group that we work with, the American Accountability Foundation, to do that series of stories this week that everyone's been talking about and reading about. The president even socialized one of them. The president of AAF, Tom Jones, up next. He's going to explain all the great work they did right after these messages.
Exactly what they're doing. They want to steal the election. We're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue, and we're going to the Capitol, They need to take back our country.
Events in Washington have taken a violent and tumultuous turn.
January 6th wasn't just a moment in history. For thousands of Americans, it was the moment their voices were taken.
It's insurrection.
They were persecuted, hunted.
Seditious conspiracy.
But behind prison walls, something unexpected happened. They found their voice again.
Started singing the national anthem.
We took it up to him at Mar-a-Lago. He goes, I'll put my voice on it.
Our supporters made this go platinum.
Real America's Voice is telling the real story of January 6th like you've never seen it before.
Everybody, this must be peaceful.
This is not the story you were shown.
I take responsibility.
This is the story they live.
Government entrapment scheme that this actually was.
The J6 Patriots are no longer staying silent. They are speaking, they are standing, and they are telling the truth.
You can't kill us. You can't beat us.
Scan the QR code or visit realamericasvoice.com. Real America's Voice presents The Sleeping Giant. Available now.
Welcome back, everybody, to our special report, China Syndrome, Beijing's Imminent Threat Inside Academia and Biolabs. Now, all throughout the show tonight, we've been talking about the threat from China, specifically around their infiltration into America's universities, stealing intellectual property, and much more. And we couldn't have talked about any of this in much detail at all without our guests tonight. They are the organization that put out this report, the great work of the American Accountability Foundation. So joining us now is the president of the American Accountability Foundation, Tom Jones. Tom, thanks so much for being with us, and thank you for this report.
Hey, Amanda, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
We are happy to have you here. I want to start with the nitty gritty. What were the parameters? I know that you guys spent a lot of time doing investigative journalism, looking into these 21 people who are affiliated with universities, these researchers. How close did someone have to be to the CCP? How many degrees of separation did someone have to be for it to flag their relationship?
Yeah, we kind of had two factors that we really wanted to look at here. One, the threat they posed to the United States. So what were they doing? Look, we didn't care about some journalism major or some fine arts professor. What we really cared about were people who were doing work in the United States that was in an area that was in a critical and sensitive technology. And then we have folks doing research in China who could establish their connection with the Chinese Communist Party, with the military research apparatus in China. There's a number of universities that the Chinese use to push folks through, or with kind of prohibited institutions in China that they had done research there before they came to the United States. So we really made sure that, hey, this wasn't just some random person. This was someone who had partnered with kind of the Chinese Communist Party's infrastructure, whether it's through the party apparatus or through the pipelines that they use to promote PLA research for the People's Liberation Army. So look, these are folks who are closely connected, whether they're active members of the party or part of the defense research establishment in China before they came over to our universities.
Yeah, huge stuff, important stuff. Earlier in the show, and over the last couple of days, because we've been talking about this every night, Ron Johnson opined, and also Chairman Rick Crawford of the House Intelligence Committee just opined that what China essentially did was use money to buy their way into these universities. These universities just want money for whatever their next big initiative is, and they're willing to trade security and access for that cash. Is it really that simple? Is that what it looks like? Why these universities? It's obvious China doesn't have our best interest. Why would a university look blindly and just take their students?
Yeah, there's two problems. One, we focused a lot on the research scholars, kind of the professors, the elite researchers, and unfortunately, it does come down to money. These folks are cheaper to work at the universities than American professors, and they're easier to get into the institutions. Now, what we saw happen was once these folks get in, they stand up labs and they start hiring their friends from China. So they get a grant for research at an American university. They've got so many FTEs that are going to be funded by that research, and they go take these FTEs and they hire more folks from China. So on that side, yeah, it's all about money. And unfortunately, on the student side, it's all about money. Like the chairman said a few minutes ago in the last segment, these folks pay full freight, so the universities are incredibly excited about it, and they just bring these folks in. Now, Chairman Crawford was talking about, hey, we need Congress to fix this. The universities are telling me, hey, Congress has got to fix this. I think our governors need to get involved. When we looked at this, we saw folks at many state universities. The guy that's on the cover of our report, posing next to a hammer and sickle flag, this guy teaches at Indiana University. Governor Brown needs to say, look, the IU, Purdue, you guys cannot be bringing in Chinese professors anymore. You got to bring in U.S. nationals who are not a security threat into our labs. But governors can put a stop to this, whether it's Governor Abbott, whether it's Governor DeSantis, whether it's Governor Braun. This can really be stopped at the state level. That's part of what we're excited about in this report. This is an opportunity for good governors to really put the brakes on some bad practices. Because look, I used to work in Congress. If we wait for Congress to get this right, we'll all be old and gray and dead. So some of our friends in the states can really step on the gas and fix this problem quickly.
Yeah.
That's really smart.
All right, Tom. So it's very clear that these universities are not going to do anything until they are absolutely forced to. But for these 21 that you've identified, have you gotten any sense of remorse from these universities? Any sense that they're going to fire them, that they're going to sanction them within their, within the academic parameters that they have? Any indication at all?
No, unfortunately, no. Right now, we're kind of in the make them see the light, part of the process. Unfortunately, I think we're going to have to go to the make them feel the heat part of the process, and I think that's, like I said, going to have to be outside pressure. Right now, they're kind of running, taking down websites, hiding, not responding to media inquiries, because I think they know they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar here. But if we don't keep up the pressure, if we don't keep the attention on the specific people, that's what we did differently here. This wasn't a discussion about some ephemeral threat. This was naming names and saying, you got these people at your schools who are a threat. Unless we keep up the pressure and keep our foot on the gas and keep exposing these people, the universities are just going to kind of move on, hope we don't pay attention, and keep doing the same old bad stuff that they've been doing for decades. But look, at the end of the day, this is a national security threat. The people that are coming here to get the science and technology to enrich the People's Liberation Army so that when the PLA goes to war with the United States Navy and the United States Army, they are better equipped than we are. And that's just unacceptable. We cannot let that happen.
Yeah. Tom, thank you so much for this report, and keep them coming, because we have learned so much from this, and something's got to change. Absolutely. Tom Jones, president of the American Accountability Foundation, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Thanks so much.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, we're going to stay on China for this last segment. We've got a few more items that we want to break down before we head out for the weekend.
The radical left knows exactly what they're doing. They want to steal the election. We're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue, and we're going to the Capitol. They need to take back our country.
Events in Washington have taken a violent and tumultuous turn.
January 6 wasn't just a moment in history. For thousands of Americans, it was the moment their voices were taken.
It's insurrection.
They were persecuted, hunted,
seditious conspiracy.
but behind prison walls, something unexpected happened. They found their voice again.
Started singing the national anthem.
We took it up to him at Mar-a-Lago. He goes, I'll put my voice on it.
Our supporters made this go platinum.
Real America's Voice is telling the real story of January 6th like you've never seen it before.
Everybody, this must be peaceful.
This is not the story you were shown.
I take responsibility.
This is the story they live.
Government entrapment scheme that this actually was.
The J6 Patriots are no longer staying silent. They are speaking, they are standing, and they are telling the truth.
You can't kill us. You can't beat us.
Scan the QR code or visit realamericasvoice.com. Real America's Voice presents The Sleeping Giant. Available now.
Welcome back, everybody, to the last segment of the show. John, something that Chairman Crawford spoke about when he was talking about these universities, saying that you have to make a law for us to basically stop taking this money. And I thought about, this frequent criticism that you hear from other countries about the United States. And frankly, they hate us because they ain't us, because it's not true. But they say that we're greedy. I think we are one of the most benevolent countries on the face of the earth. But they say that we're greedy. This, to me, this is the greed of America. It's not the American people. It's not American values. It's not our country as a whole. But you have systems like academia that absolutely are greedy.
Now listen, what the chairman revealed is that these universities aren't willing to do something for the good of the country unless they're forced to do it. Money's more important than the good of the nation. And when we talk about America first should also be each of us making sure we put our country first. But that's not what you heard today. I heard some really important news tonight, though, Amanda. I thought 4 really big things. That's the ones that jumped out to me. Let's start with Kash Patel. Kash Patel said that the China initiative, which had been shut down by the Biden administration, the counterintelligence efforts to fight China, is back in force. That's really important. A new version of it, more aggressive, more robust. I thought it was a really big deal. In the second block, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya told us for the first time, unequivocally, all gain-of-function research, that dangerous research that Tony Fauci was so excited about, that is probably at the heart of the pandemic, that it's been shut down. And both of those men said they were really disturbed by what chemicals were found in the 2 labs. The third thing that jumped out to me was Chairman Rick Crawford saying very unequivocally that he's fearful that China's intention in having that lab in Vegas and the other one in California was to create a ground zero patient for another pandemic that would take down America. Pretty provocative. I think pretty scary stuff when you think about it. And then Kash Patel saying that his predecessor, Chris Wray, did not give the American public or Congress the truth about the earlier California lab. Those are 4 bombshell headlines that came out of these interviews. And there's a lot to chew on, a lot of follow-up to go on here.
Absolutely. Well, and to what Chairman Crawford said about the patient zero scenario, I mean, that was one of the reasons that I asked the director, Jay Bhattacharya, about if we were prepared for this type of scenario in the future. And he admitted, he said, that's a whole nother conversation because that's something that we've got to improve upon. But John, I suppose I'm just grateful because we do have an administration who recognizes the threat of China. And I said this earlier, we have a president who sees China as an adversary, as he should, as opposed to just, competition. And we had a clip that I don't think we have time for, but Mark Carney basically refusing to identify China as a threat. And when you have these milquetoast, these wet noodle leaders of countries, then that's how you end up with threats like China infiltrating Vegas, infiltrating California, and God knows where else.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I'm grateful for tonight, the great work of Tom Jones and the American Accountability Foundation. They did such amazing work. They helped us do this reporting the last week, a great partner. And tonight you saw the impact of that reporting with major players in both Congress and the administration getting us up to speed. I think we began 8 feet behind the 8 ball when Biden gave the keys to Donald Trump on this issue. We're probably a few inches behind the 8 ball still, but we made a lot of progress in the last year.
Absolutely. Well, and someone who wasn't a part of tonight, but who has warned us about China repeatedly as much as you have, John, Peter Schweitzer, talking about these young Chinese who still have the familial relations growing up in this country. Yeah, another terrifying aspect that we're going to have to nail.
Weaponized birthright citizenship.
That's right. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for us tonight. See you on.
The radical left knows exactly what they're doing. They want to steal the election. We're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue, and we're going to the Capitol. They need to take back our country.
Events in Washington have taken a violent and tumultuous turn.
January 6th wasn't just a moment in history. For thousands of Americans, it was the moment their voices were taken.
It's insurrection.
They were persecuted, hunted.
Seditious conspiracy.
But behind prison walls, something unexpected happened. They found their voice again.
Started singing the national anthem.
We took it up to him at Mar-a-Lago. He goes, I'll put my voice on it.
Our supporters made this go platinum.
Real America's Voice is telling the real story of January 6th like you've never seen it before.
Everybody, this must be peaceful.
This